Hello, welcome. Today I am chatting with you about the upcoming stress-free notes sprint and talking about how do you do a sprint for your progress notes to get them done when you are behind? What does that look like? All the good things. And I'm realizing, check that out. Got a couple of flowers I need to fix up there. So welcome if you are here and you are curious about what could a sprint look like. What is the sprint that I run in my community? So I had people submit questions ahead of time, and I have those common ones listed out here. But if you have questions as we're going along, please feel free to put those in the chat or even in the comments section if you're watching the recording later. I guess I should also introduce myself. Hello, if you don't know me. I'm Dr. Maelisa McCaffrey, founder of QA Prep, author of this book over here, Stress-Free Documentation for Mental Health Therapists, and I run groups for therapists who are behind in their progress notes. So we catch up on notes, and we are shifting from a longer program where we used to do 14 weeks to catch up on notes to a shorter sprint timeframe that we're doing more frequently. So I'm really excited about this because one of the most common things that happened in the previous catch-up groups that I did was people would lose steam, right? They lose momentum. And so a sprint is, we are doing this for 4 weeks so that it is a really targeted focus on catching up on your notes or your treatment plans or whatever it is that you need to catch up on. So I wanted to answer specific questions that people submitted about the stress-free notes sprint. But yeah, just in case you are not familiar with that. So this is, if you are behind in your progress notes, that's the most common one. I call notes the dishes and laundry of documentation, right? Every time you show up and do a session, you have a new note to do. And so notes are the things that tend to get, people tend to fall behind in the most. But there are also people who have used this strategy for catching up on treatment plans. Maybe it's been a long time since you updated treatment plans. You have no idea who has a current treatment plan and who doesn't, or you never created treatment plans, right? Like when you started your practice, you weren't quite as on top of all the documentation things as you are now. And so it's time to make that happen. There are people who use this to catch up on assessments because they've had a lot of documentation just overall piling up that they haven't been able to manage. And so one of the big things I talk about anytime I talk about catching up on progress notes or really any documentation is that you have to have a strategy for this week, for right now first, before you can start the process of catching up. And it feels really counterintuitive, but frequently what happens is people will join one of the groups and they will think, okay, I'm going to catch up on my notes. Instead, what happens is they actually get current, they get a system for writing notes now, and during our time together, they don't fall behind any further, and they figure out a schedule that actually works for them, and they start saving themselves time on documentation because they, enact some different strategies that I talk about for saving time on progress notes, for improving the quality of them, so they leave feeling less stressed about their notes, they leave feeling less shame because they know all these other people have the same problem as they do, right? And they know how to get current, right? So they are able to leave without adding to the pile and knowing, all right, I can keep on top of this. And that is huge because it builds confidence. And once you have that confidence, you're able to actually problem solve the bigger thing, which is catching up on notes, and think about it more realistically than just the feelings of like overwhelm that come on when you're behind, and every day you're getting more and more behind. So what we do is kind of like stop that in its tracks. And I like this sprint method because a lot of people come in with this energy of like, yes, okay, I'm ready. I want to do the thing. But that's not an energy you can maintain long-term, right? And that's okay. It's okay to use this strategic way of using sprints so that you're like, okay, I will spend this month hardcore catching up on notes. This is my focus. And then I can go back to normal life. In a normal life, I'm not adding to the pile. I'm staying on top of everything. I have a system for making this work. And then in a few months, I'll do another sprint and boom, I will tackle a bunch of these things. And over time, the stress lessens significantly, as well as the actual administrative load, right? Like the actual time you are spending on paperwork, and you get a little bit smarter about it. And all of these things just start to compound. But over time, I've found that this is how the strategy works for people. Even when I had longer catch-up groups, we did this for 14 weeks, people could not sustain, right, like that energy. And so they would drop off and then maybe come back, or they would drop off and then join another catch-up group in a couple of months. And so I've switched this to a sprint because that's really how people are kind of using it anyways. And so let's plan for it. And I'm really, really excited about it. So, okay, questions that people have about the sprint. And I put the link in the chat if you want to check it out. Is what if I can't attend all the live meetings? Yes. So in the sprint, we have some weekly meetings. We have a weekly meeting. It is really only 4 meetings. So this is the other benefit of doing a sprint over this longer term commitment. You're only committing to 4 meetings. That's it. And so the meetings are really critical because this is where I see the transformation happen, especially for people who are completely overwhelmed. You've never tried this before. You've tried catching up before. It's never really worked for you. You've never been able to do this. Stay caught up on notes. You've never done one of our groups before. The meetings are instrumental for creating the mindset shift that's necessary to make this actual change happen. So hearing others ask questions you might be too embarrassed to ask, hearing from people who are alumni who have done this already and have tried different strategies that worked for them. The meetings are where we both share and problem solve as a group. So they're really key, but you only have to attend 4. And they are Thursdays at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. So if you are able for the month of March to just clear 4 Thursdays during that time frame, then you can make it happen. I do think it's worth it to make an effort to attend the live meetings. They're not recorded on purpose so that people who feel really nervous about talking about the fact that they don't have notes don't have to worry about that component, right? So you show up, you get the community, you get the sense of not being alone, and you can talk about it openly without fear of anyone needing to watch or find out later. So they aren't recorded. You do want to show up live. Now the benefit is that we also will have peer-led co-working, and I will do some I will lead some co-working sessions as well. So it will be a lot of showing up on Zoom during that month. But when you show up, you are getting things done. You're either creating a plan and strategy for improving your notes, getting your notes done, getting treatment plans done, whatever it is, or you are actually just showing up and getting the work done. So we are focused on getting things done and getting these notes done in that sprint period. The next question that I got was, will this actually work for my situation? So I get this, in different forms a lot. And I understand that everyone does have a unique reason they're behind in notes. Everyone has a unique way of writing notes, all of the factors, right? And I have literally helped thousands of therapists do this. It is a fairly common strategy. It is a common strategy and structure that I use that helps. I have 100 different ways of getting this done. So I am happy to adjust and pivot based on what people need and what works for them. But this program works. It really is about showing up to the groups and then just showing up to co-working to get work done. Those 2 things, I mean, that's it right there. I give you other resources and tools, but that makes it work for your situation. So we've had people who are in college counseling centers or work in a group practice or an agency, community mental health centers, school-based settings, as well as mostly therapists who are in private practice, right? So regardless of the situation, the clients you see, the setup you have, I promise you, I've probably worked in that setting for one, because I've done a lot of different things clinically in my past. And I get it, and we can problem solve together. So yes, I absolutely am confident, regardless of your situation, it will work for you. If you can make the live meetings, like make those a priority, get those in. The next question I got is, how far behind is too far behind for this to work? So I get that, that question written as is. I get that question like, I have, years, will this work? I have this much to do. Like, how far behind is too far behind? So the idea with the sprint, when I first created the catch-up group years and years ago, my goal was like, okay, we'll help all these people who are behind in their notes. I'll help them get caught up, right? We'll do this group and we'll meet and we'll get caught up together. I quickly found out that it took a little bit longer than most people want it to take. And that is the reality. What I also found out was that actually people didn't mind that, right? So as you get into this process and you're stopping the bleeding, you're not catching, you're staying caught up on current notes. You're staying what I call home base. Home base is always this week's notes. We always focus on this week's notes first. So as people start staying caught up, they start maintaining home base, they're getting those weekly notes done. Then it felt good, and that was motivating to then start the process. But a lot of people, everyone needs to do that first, like 100% of the time. And a lot of people need that mindset shift before they can even look at how many notes that they have due. So people would come to me and say, I haven't written notes in years, or in months and months and months. I've barely ever written notes, but they had no idea how many notes they had to do. And they were terrified to look at that number. And that's okay. We don't have to look at the number to create a plan. But we do have to address that paralyzing fear in order to create a plan to catch up. So what ended up happening was that process often took people that whole first round, and then they would join a second round. And in that second round, that's when they would start to catch up on notes. The other thing that happened is there were people who maybe use that second round to start catching up on notes, create their catch-up plan. And then in the third round, they were just continuing with more notes. And so they were giving themselves a break in between our get notes done times, in between our meeting times, in between when the sessions were happening. And that actually makes it a lot more effective. And again, that's why I've shifted to this sprint format where we're planning to work in these shorter bursts, because that's what tends to be most effective. So there is no too far behind, right? There is no such thing. I do have different strategies for how far behind you are, for the different types of clients that you're behind in, for looking at risk levels and kind of triaging who to start with. So there is some strategy there, and I do provide specific guidance on that. But there's no such thing as too far behind. Is it realistic that if you are 3 years behind in notes, I'm not going to tell you you're going to catch up on all your notes in 4 weeks. You wouldn't have caught up in all your notes in 14 weeks either. That's not realistic. What is realistic is getting you on track to, again, stop the bleeding, make sure that we shift this whole habit and cycle into a different way of doing things for your practice, so you get caught up, so you can stay caught up on notes. And then we can create a plan that's more long-term, that will last depending on your situation. Whether that plan is just doing 1 day a month, we do get notes done days. And so you just join those, and that maybe that takes you 2 years. I've worked with a lot of people where it has taken 2 to 3 years overall to catch up, but that is because they took purposeful breaks. So they had a plan, they felt good about it, and it wasn't overtaking their life, right? So that's the reality. If you have a lot of notes to do, and a lot is subjective. So people who have 50 notes to do have a lot of notes to do. People who have 500 notes have a lot of notes to do. People who have 5,000 notes, right? And all of those exist. And I have worked with all of those people. So there's no such thing as too far behind. There really isn't. And yes, it's a different strategy. And I am happy to tackle all of those various problems and make it work. What's even more important is actually what works for your lifestyle. So I had somebody who was almost 1,000 notes behind and did catch up in one catch-up group, but that person didn't have kids, told their partner, like, I am basically like unavailable for the next 10 weeks. and they really did spend like every waking moment that they were not working or doing something they had to do, catching up on notes. And at the end of that group, they were exhausted. They were caught up, but they were exhausted. And that is honestly just a strategy that is not realistic for 99.9% of people, right? And so is it possible if you remove literally everything else in your life? Yes. Now, if you are the type of person like me, where you're like, I kind of like having like a big goal and just like hyper focusing on it, the 4 weeks allows you to do that. But again, it's not like destroying everything in your life and all of your relationships at the expense of catching up on your notes, right? Or, because you're catching up on your notes. So 4 weeks is a little bit more realistic for removing a lot of other responsibilities you might have. Now, related to that is, do you have a calendar date for the next sprint? Because I know for some people, if you're like, okay, yes, this sounds amazing, I want to tackle this, this makes sense, but maybe I can't really do that in March. I can't commit to that. We will also do one in June. So if you're watching the recording, this is February of 2026. So we have one happening in March. Sign up now. The link is in the chat. Check that out. And we will do this again in June. So that's the next date that we have set. So you can plan ahead now, like literally block off your Thursdays now for June. And if you are committed, if you say like, there's no way I can make March happen and I know I need this, that would be my recommendation to you. Block off March now, start setting aside the money if that also is a barrier. Make sure you have Thursdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on your calendar, and extra time. Start making a note to yourself, like literally put it in your calendar right now. Do not schedule any extra clients. Do not commit to things, right? Put whatever reminders you need in and plan ahead for that now. If you're able to join us for this sprint in March, you can start doing that right after you sign up, right? Like start blocking off as much time in your calendar as you can so that you can dedicate yourself to getting this task done. All right, related, next question. How much time will this actually take each week? And then I will see if there are any questions in the chat. So feel free to put your questions in the chat as well, if you're here live. How much time will this actually take each week? So each week we have one meeting that I have scheduled for 1.5 hours, just because I know that some people can't realistically adjust their entire schedule. And I want to make sure we have time for everyone. We may not use up that entire 1.5 hours. And if you just want to plan to be there for 1 hour, you will absolutely get what you need out of it. Again, we don't record those, so you don't need to plan to watch any recordings. You just need to plan to show up. That really, I mean, if I could boil it down to like one thing that makes people successful in these sprints or in any catch-up notes group, is show up. Show up to the groups, show up to co-working, just show up when there are meetings. So how much time will it take each week? At least that 1 hour. And then at least another half an hour, we have an assigned lesson. So typically they're like 15 to 25 minutes long. The lessons that we'll have each week. You don't necessarily have to watch the lessons, but especially like the first one is very useful for most people. What goes in a progress note, I walk you through that, because that's a question that comes up as soon as you start to sit down and write a bunch of progress notes, right? Like, what do I actually put in here? So we have the course. So I have this book, Stress-Free Documentation for Mental Health Therapists. There is a related course, and I used the course to write the book. So I built that course actually in 2012. 2012, 2013 is when I originally created that course. And then I have since updated and improved it many times, and then used that foundation to create this book. So all that to say is you will have access to that course indefinitely. So that's another thing I've added as part of the sprint, because I know as people start to catch up, then they start to refine things. So it's like, now that I've stopped the bleeding, now that I feel like my ongoing caseload is manageable, now that I can do documentation on a regular basis, I want to improve it. Or now I can work on saving myself time. My recommendation is always going to be adjust your templates, right, in order to save yourself time. And so you can start doing those things. The course gives you all those resources, but you get to keep that indefinitely, or forever. You get to keep it forever. So that is something that I did not include before. And honestly, I have revised the course enough at this point. Like I said, I created in 2012, 2013. That is really good. Like, it really is some of my best work ever. And I want people to have it and to use it. And so if you join this sprint, you get to keep access to that course forever. So that way you don't have to watch all the lessons. You don't have to do all the things in this sprint. I have curated already. Like, I know exactly which videos for each person each week. And it's just one video. So you're going to have your one meeting, your one video. So plan for about 90 minutes a week doing that. Excuse me. And then whatever co-working time. So the other time is whatever you can dedicate to actually catching up on notes, right? So obviously, if you can clear your schedule during those 4 weeks to have 5 hours a week, you'll get more done than if you can clear your schedule to have 1 hour a week. I mean, that's just reality, right? And so it really is about how much time can you realistically dedicate to it. But you will need an hour and a half to get the stuff done in our course. And honestly, even if that's all you could dedicate, if you're like, I really want to join, I just don't know if I could do more than that, I don't know how much actual co-working I could do, that will give you, excuse me, let me get some water. All right. That will give you the foundation that you need in order to create a catch-up plan, have all your questions answered about notes ongoing, because you'll still have access to that course. You would have everything you need to continue on the journey after our group is done, whether or not you join future sprints. And then you'd have the option to join future sprints at the discounted alumni rate too. So how much time? However much time you can dedicate. The more you can dedicate during this 4 weeks, the better, the better it will be, the more notes you will get done. But I do think don't feel like I have to completely clear my schedule and have no life for these 4 weeks. If you could spend a couple hours a week on our group, you will absolutely see benefit. You can just read some of the testimonials to see like the major benefits that people have, even just from showing up from the first group. All right, so then someone else asked, I'm actually not behind in my notes, but I'm pretty new to private practice, and the uncertainty of whether my notes are right or good enough creates avoidance and anxiety. This is so common. Could this benefit my situation? Absolutely. So here is why. If you're new, if you're experiencing, even people who are not new to private practice experience this, where it's like, are my notes good enough? What do I put in my notes? What do I need to do? Are these right? That fear is so common. And the thing is, that does compound over time. And the other thing is, it's so easy to fall behind in notes. One day, if you have one busy day of clients, and that's the day where this is more likely to happen, and then you don't get your notes done right after that, you have now maybe easily in 1 week, you could now have 10 notes to do. You go into the next week, and then you're bringing those 10 notes with you. And maybe that next week was already a busy week for you. And you could see how very quickly in a month, it could be easy to have 30 notes to do. And that feels like an overwhelming problem. So this group will teach you the strategies to avoid that happening. It will also teach you the strategies. Almost everyone falls behind in notes at some point, right? So I have, different people do. Most people who are in the catch-up group will fall behind again at some point. The goal is not that you never fall behind in your notes ever, but that if you do, or when you do again, you know exactly what to do. So you catch it sooner because you're able to recognize those patterns, and you've set things in place so that you can actually reflect and catch it sooner and know when this is a problem. And you have the strategy to fix it when it's still at that small scale. So I really think it could be huge. Also, you get the course, which you get lifetime access to the course. And so all of those questions you would have about progress notes in the future, you can go to those Q&A sessions. You can check out the lessons in the course. And so you'll know exactly what to do. And really that very first week, we will answer that exact question about what is good enough notes, what goes in a progress note. All right. So then the next question was, will this cover using AI for progress notes? And I am always happy to answer questions about that. That does become a topic that we discuss in every one of these groups, because people who are behind in their notes are a lot more likely to say, hey, let me try this AI note strategy. So we probably will talk about it, and I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to share my personal opinions about different platforms. I have resources related to AI that I will share in the group with people. So this is not a course, right? You get access to the course when you sign up. The course does talk a little bit about AI, and I'm happy to go over anyone's AI questions at any point and share resources. To me, that is now a component of catching up, is considering using AI as a strategy. So that's one of the things we'll talk about. And then let's see, Megan posted a question in the chat. Just sent this via email, no worries. Curious if there's some kind of discount for alumni. Yes, there is. So if you are an alumni, you should have an email. So check your email account, or you can send us an email if for some reason you didn't get it, and then we can send you that alumni discount. And that is the plan that moving forward, since we are really, most people would go through the catch-up group more than one time. And so that's why I think planning for the sprint to be something that is cyclical and that you just go through repeatedly as needed is a better strategy overall. And because of that, we are offering an alumni discount. So when you repeat it, you do get a discount. So yeah, reach out to us. And it looks like you already emailed us, so we'll reply with that link after this. Okay, last question that I had previously submitted. And then if you have a question about joining the Notes Sprint, put it in the chat before we sign off here. Or if you're watching the recording, go ahead and put it in the below. Let's see. Oh, and the last question, what is the difference between the tracks? So this is new to this sprint. So I did not do this with the catch-up group, but people were using the catch-up group in this way. And so that's why when I made all these changes to the sprint format, I added what I'm calling different tracks. So what I find is that, again, people come in at different places, but there's really three common things that people have, three common goals people have when they join, when they used to join the catch-up group and now when they're joining the sprint. So number one is, I'm behind. I've never done this process before. Maybe on your own, you've done catch-up, catch up on notes, then go back to it, then catch up on notes again, then get things better. But that's like one person. They've never joined a sprint before, never joined the catch-up group. So those people usually need to start with home base, with making sure that your progress notes this week are getting done. I cannot help you get caught up on notes if you're still just adding to the pile every single week, right? It's a pointless thing. So for those people, the goal is home base, this week's notes. How do we make sure that each week during this sprint, you get your notes done? And that might mean during week one, you try out a new strategy, you go through creating a schedule, you identify how long it takes you to write a note, all that stuff. And the first strategy you try doesn't work. And you realize, okay, that's not going to, and so, but that's the point. of this sprint. And so you figure out a schedule that works for you to actually get your notes done every single day. So that is the first, that's track one. Track two is for people who have already done that, or maybe this person who had the question, even had the question about like, they're not behind yet, but they worry about their notes a lot. So track two is, all right, you have a schedule, you're getting your notes done consistently, and you have a huge backlog. Maybe the backlog is from months ago, years ago, whatever. Doesn't really matter. We have similar strategies regardless. So for those people, it is, all right, let's create a realistic catch-up plan. So we know that you are no longer adding to the pile, but how many notes do you have to do? And we can create this catch-up plan if you're still too scared to identify that number. That's okay. So you don't have to, although it does help. So we identify like how many notes do you need to do? What is realistic for you in a catch-up plan? And we really look at, do you want to plan to just do sprints, whether that's with us or on your own? Do you want to plan to do 1 day a month? Do you want to plan to do consistent hours a month? Do you want to plan to do, a sprint and then not even worry about your backlog for 2 straight months? That is very personal. And I have different options for you, but it's really around creating that plan for catching up on progress notes. And the reason I emphasize this is the strategy and what works for catching up on older notes is often different from what works for keeping current on notes. So that's why those are really 2 separate issues, and you've got to work on keeping current before we can address your backlog. So track 2 is the backlog, as we figure out that strategy and you just start getting through those notes. Track 3 is another group that I never planned to have in the catch-up group or in the stress-free notes sprint. So when I first started these catch-up groups years ago, again, I just thought we'd do one group, people get caught up and we move on. And then people kept wanting to come back to the group. So people were coming back for a third time and they were like, I'm caught up on notes, but I still have all this other paperwork to do. And typically treatment plans are the next thing, either treatment plans or intake assessments. And so people would come back just to catch up on the other documentation. So that's who track 3 is for. So that is a much smaller group of people. But now that I'm kind of planning these sprints ahead of time, I'm hoping that people can plan for that in their schedule. So you're caught up on your notes, you're pretty consistent with the notes, getting them done pretty much every week. Now it's time to catch up on all the other documentation. That is where we dig into track 3. And so for that one, there are different lessons on things like treatment plans and strategies on saving time on other types of documentation that are not progress notes. Because I do find the documentation that's not progress notes tends to actually take a little bit longer for most people, but it's less frequent, right? So if progress notes are your dishes and laundry, meaning literally every single day you are adding to that pile, whether or not you take care of it, I would say like treatment plans, intake assessments, that's more like your oil change type of thing, right? And so those are things that you're not doing every single day that you show up to work or see clients, but you are doing them frequently, and you can anticipate when they're coming and plan ahead for that. And so there's a strategy for both making sure we stay on top of those and have that plan ahead, but then also catching up on them. All right, so that is all the questions I have. Does anyone else, we'll do a last call. If you have questions about the stress-free notes sprint, I will put that link in the chat here again. I'm super excited about this sprint and about the people that have signed up already. I would love to see you in there. If you're on the fence, or if you're here watching this and you're like, I still don't know if this is for me, please do ask your question in the chat. And if it's going to take you a while to formulate the question, just put in the chat, like, I'm writing my question and I'll wait for you. But, I would love to help you decide if this actually is a good fit for you. Because I have seen this work for so many different people in so many different scenarios. And I've also heard so many people say, I heard you talk about this catch-up group for years before I signed up, or I kept seeing it and kept thinking it wouldn't work for me. And they waited years. And unfortunately, for most people, if this is something you're really thinking, wow, this could be so helpful for me, and then not signing up, then next time you see me promote the next sprint, you will probably have either the same backlog of notes you have now or even more, right? And so I say that because oftentimes it's this sense that like it's this feeling many therapists have of like, I should have been able to manage this. It's almost the same feeling that people describe, you know, if you're going to have someone come clean your house, like I need to do the cleaning before the cleaner comes. People have that same mindset around the notes. Like, well, I need to do this before I can join the sprint. No, join it when things are messy. That is the best time to join the sprint, in the middle of the messiness, so that we can get this done. Now, I will say, right, like I've had people tell me, my spouse was just diagnosed with cancer, and we are now like, I don't even know what's happening in 2 weeks, but I know that we're going to be doing all of this. Don't sign up for the sprint, right? Like focus on that. That is a scenario where no, you probably don't want to add another thing to your plate as far as time commitment, right? So that's really the thing. Don't think of the sprint as like adding another thing to your plate. This is not like less. Yes, there are lessons, because I want you to have resources to be successful. But it's not about adding something to your plate. It's about dedicating the time that now you tell yourself you will dedicate, but don't actually follow through on. When you have meetings to show up to, when you've paid for meetings to show up to, when you know there's an expert like me who is waiting to problem solve with you that you have limited access to, that is when you'll show up and get the thing done. So that's why this works, is when people are ready to dedicate the time to showing up. And that's why I always say, like, if all you do is commit to showing up to every meeting, you will absolutely get your money's worth. You will absolutely see progress, and likely make a lot more progress than you'd think that you would have made. So, all right, I don't see any more questions. So we are going to go ahead and end. I am probably going to do another Q&A session and just talk about this process a little bit more at the end of the week. So keep an eye out for that. But this is your sign. Like, don't wait to sign up. Just get in there, join the sprint. I would love to welcome you inside and get you moving forward, get you moving past this backlog of notes. All right. Thanks everyone for being here. Good to have you all here. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you inside the sprint.